never hid that he was just in jail for financial crimes. He never hid it. He was always honest about it. And his message ultimately was a good message for men. Now, it was the wrong messenger, but the message itself was a message you really can't argue with.
People come up on money all the time and fall off quick as hell. And why is that? It's because discipline. People lack discipline. Men in general lack discipline. How can you become successful in life? How can you, get further in life if you can't discipline yourself to, control money? And it's not even just about money. You have to control yourself in a few areas.
At some point, he made a pivot just from giving men advice to doing more red pill content, interviewing women, telling them how they're delusional. And with that content comes toxicity, and people will pull up his past criminal history and use it against them. But for the most part, he was pretty honest, right? He would openly talk about going to jail for fraud at some point, but he would say he's not a scammer. He would never categorize himself as a scammer. He would just say he did something a scammer would do in the past.
So I created the brand, and the idea came from my past life, which was I went to prison for fraud, and while I was sitting in prison, I didn't want to be known as a scammer because I'm not a scammer, and I was just trying to find different ways to articulate myself and express myself, But so it was Finesse's Only Club. It was Rich and Unemployed. I also had Fraud, which is Finally Rich After Unstoppable Determination. So I'm just bouncing off the ideas of, the life I used to live, and.
So in the life that you used to live, were you a scammer then?
No. I did something that a scammer would do, but I finessed a situation.
I ain't a cheater. I just did something that a cheater would do.
Yeah. So
no, he was a scammer, and a pretty good one at that, to be honest. Because what we saw, whenever this dude did commit a scam or a crime, he did it in the largest scale possible. One day while he was walking past his local corner store, he saw this sticker that gave him a brilliant idea. And the sticker says, "We accept EBT." When
So he must have bought plenty shit with the EBT, or was he using the EBT and taking the money off the ATM? Because they did say some of it let that happen.
See, even though he was down bad at the time, he was still not going to engage in low-level criminal activities, like running in a corner store and robbing it for some change. He wanted a way to make a larger income. He wanted a way to make something substantial that would be worth all the effort. He wanted a grocery store that would cater and accept customers with EBT, so he could essentially receive a guaranteed income and a guaranteed check because the government is going to be funding everything. But he had an issue. He didn't have a store, and he didn't have any customers. At that moment, he decided I would just create the store and create the customers, and the government will fund the entire operation. He created an LLC for a grocery store that didn't exist called J Goods Grocery. He even registered the grocery store at a physical location that it was not located at, and then he applied to accept EBT for his grocery store that did not exist. Once the government approved,
oh my God, this what they was doing with the little pandemic scam. So, yeah, okay.
His application to accept
that was in
EBT
2014
at this grocery store that don't exist, he then had another issue in mind. I don't have the customers. Because usually when customers give you money, they're expecting goods in return. And because the grocery store didn't exist, he had no goods. So he had to find a solution for that particular problem, and he did. His solution for this problem was to be his own customer. So he went on to obtain people's personal information unlawfully, applied for an EBT card under those people's personal information.
Oh my God.
And once the EBT cards was accepted, he would have the EBT cards mailed out to a physical location and pick it up from that location. Once in possession of the EBT card, he would use a payment processor to essentially have the EBT cards in his possession, pay for products that don't exist from a grocery store that don't exist, and the government will give him real money in exchange. And this man thought he discovered the wheel.
Yeah,
literally. In hindsight, whatever he was doing sounded really brilliant and it worked really well, but it wasn't a new idea or a new scam. Others have attempted this in the past and it never ended well for them. Now, But in the meantime, though, he was making so much money and it was working so well for him that he had his sister create her own fake grocery store, and they began to run it up with her store as well. Just like most crimes targeting the federal government.
Now, sis, now you done put sis in it. Now we both going to jail. What's your problem? Now, sis.
Government, they eventually figured out what was going on, and they shut it down and arrested everybody involved. Him and his sister were both arrested. The problem came in because when people went to apply for their actual EBT card, they were told they already had an EBT card under their name. Or when taxes came around and people realized, like their tax was being like siphoned off for things they quote unquote owed to SNAP, they was confused. He ultimately defrauded the government out of $395,000. Him and his sister were both sentenced to jail. He received 3 years in prison and she received 6 months. When you have to sit in a prison cell for 3 years, you do a lot of reflecting. You have to sit with yourself. You have to look yourself in the eyes in that mirror and really think about all the bad decisions you made. And for most people, you change after prison. Not for Jonathan, though. After 3 years of reflecting, man, bro got out of prison and he ain't learned a goddamn thing. He got released from prison in early 2020 in the early stages of the pandemic. And it was like an entirely new world. There was so much money out here to scam for that he couldn't resist. But he told himself he was going to hit one more lick. He was going to do one more scam just to get himself some startup money after being released from prison and then move on to a completely legit life. Whatever scam he participated in after being released from prison, we don't find out what scam he participated in until a little later in this video when everything come crashing down. But whatever scam he participated in made him enough, made him millions of dollars to where he was able to not just have some real money to restart his life after prison, but he was wealthy. He was incredibly wealthy. And he decided that he was done scamming. He was done with crime. And he was going to move on and start a legit business and a legit brand and really try to make something of this money that he essentially scammed from the government. He started the Rich and Unemployed Company, which was a clothing company as well as a media company. He had the Rich and Unemployed merch, but he also had the podcast to come along with it. And with the money he had, the podcast quality was crispy from day one. And he was able to book a lot of big-time guests like Tommy Lee from Love and Hip Hop. And his podcast was gaining a lot of attraction. And he was also able to work his way into huge collabs. After scamming his entire life, he finally had a legit business. He finally had a business he could make money from legally and sleep easy at night without worrying about going to jail. And he was determined, because his podcast was taking off and he was making a lot of money from merch and other things, he didn't want to go back to crime, and he completely left the life of crime. He was 100% legit. His last documented crime was April of 2021. So that would mean he would live a life of crime-free for 4 years. So after seeing how unproblematic and stress-free a legal life is, he was motivated to preach that message and tell other men to go completely legit and leave behind illegal businesses because they came with nothing but stress. And he made it his mission to essentially like spread that message and preach it. And he would do so in every big collab he did.
Close us out with a word. I want you to speak specifically to a person who is a previous version of themselves. And right now, they're on the
He said, don't try shit on me.
Of achieving a better life. Put back into their not so great life. They could be going back to prison. They could be going back to the street life. They can be going back to the strip club. They can be going back to something that doesn't serve them. Talk to that person. Give them some advice on what you would do.
I would say, man, listen, the same amount of energy that it takes to do any illegal activities, it's the same amount of energy that it takes to do legal things. I've been on both sides of the field, and I've learned that doing those type of things, you'll never really be comfortable. You'll really never be satisfied.
Get out my face.
And to have to look over your shoulder, that's terrifying for me. I can't live that life no more. So you need to look at your life and see where you want to be, and what you're doing right now, is it taking me there? I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're into, but you have a bigger purpose. I found my purpose.
This nigga finally in here, huh?
Some people.
He finally in here. KJ still got more hours than you, dickhead. W up top, chicken. Finally getting some hours. No applaud. No applaud. No applaud.
May not ever go, but I had to go through that to get here, and you have to go through a lot of bullshit in life to get where you're trying to get to.
Being 4 years removed from doing crime, bro thought he was in it clear. He thought he was scotch free. He thought he got away with the perfect crime.
69.3 messages an hour, 842 messages. Yet KJ got more hours than you. 1,100 messages this week. Yet KJ got more hours than you. Let it be T1 straight clapping for him. You cry.
He's about to live legal and enjoy his life. But it didn't work out.
Cry. You sound like a bitch crying. Go find your dad, nigga.
And that's what happened to him. See, he scammed at a scale so large that the government never stopped investigating how these people got away with $10 million. Yes. He was involved in a crime that scammed unemployment for $10 million. A year after scamming the government's unemployment system for $10 million, this man started a podcast called Rich and Unemployed. Now, this is self-snitching at levels we ain't never seen before. This is like the most deceptive, coy, slick self-snitching. Can you imagine being them federal agents, man, and you start to put things together and you start to investigate him and think he might be involved in this scam, and then you look at his podcast name and it said Rich and Unemployed. Man, you probably say, yeah, he did it. Yep, yeah. No, he did it. He's the prime suspect. So he used a mix of his past crimes to actually pull off the ultimate scam to finesse unemployment out of $10 million. In his first indictment, he showcased that he knew how to obtain people's identities unlawfully. He carried over this skill to this new scam to make his business.
July 15, defendant began their scheme to defraud California EDD. I said it. This is what they did in COVID. And he was able to get 10 mil. Personal informations, individuals, unknown means. Defendant, along with others, submitted fraudulent UI applications via the internet. Used stolen personal information on unwitting without their knowledge. Falsely claimed eligibility. Nigga said, send me some money. I need more. You gotta pay for missions? What the fuck?
$1 zillion. So the scam started July 15th of 2020, and the defendants began their scheme to defraud the California EDD.
How many missions come on there?
California EDD. He's in Georgia. By obtaining personal information, names, date of births, and social security numbers of unwitting individuals through unknown means.
So you don't need no more missions.
July 27th of 2020, the defendants, along with others, electronically submitted fraudulent UI applications to the California EDD via the internet. These applications used the stolen information of unwitting individuals without their knowledge or authorization. The applications falsely claimed eligibility for UI benefits, including misrepresenting CV-19 related reasons for unemployment.
Nope.
They used a VPN to mask the originating IP address, concealing the computers used to submit the fraudulent claims. They would also apply for the unemployment in their own names as well, knowing they aren't residents of California. But the thing is, especially during that time, there was like a quota that needed to be made. Like the quota was, bro, y'all need to process so many applications because people needed their money fast. So a lot of these scams were going undetected at the time because people were just pushing applications through trying to meet that quota. So these dudes made a mistake because they also applied for the unemployment in their own name, and they sent their debit cards to addresses that 300 other debit cards were sent to as well. After the fraudulent applications were approved, the defendants will update the claimant information
What the fuck? Oh, they gotta be dumb as hell. Oh, they gotta be dumb as hell. Submitted fraudulent in his own name, falsely claiming California residency and wages. A debit card account ending in 9335 with UI payments was mailed to Decatur, Georgia on or about August 16th. Submitted a fraudulent, also falsely claiming residency was mailed to Atlanta on or about August 18th, 2020. Defendants updated claimant to redirect debit cards to addresses in Northern District. Wow. 300 debit cards.
To redirect debit cards to addresses in the Northern District of Georgia. Now, over 300 debit cards were mailed to various addresses with anywhere between $19,200 to $20,000 listed on the debit card. So 300 times 20,000 is $6 million off the rip. However, the feds believe that they were able to scam up to $10 million. I can't begin to think what the audacity of thinking I can scam $10 million from the
and not get caught. That's greedy. 10 million. That's what y'all too greedy for me.
Feds, and thinking I won't get caught feels like. I don't have that level of confidence or audacity, right? You have to know you're getting caught at some point, right?
Right.
At some point. Now, the debit cards came over $6 million. Now, the reason why $6 million was able to go through at the time was because quotas were trying to be made, bro. There was no verification process. But 4 years later, with Doge and all the audits down, they're going through all these applications and they're combing through every fine detail. And when they look at California EDD, $6 million got sent to Georgia, huh? That's how he got swept. And 4 years later, they finally caught him in 2025 is when they arrested him. Now, this is like the early stages of this particular indictment. He just got arrested. So right now, we don't know the outcome. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's snitching. But if he's not snitching, then he's effed. Because the government already filed a protection order to protect the witnesses and the rats in this case, bruh. So the government further requests an order stating that defendant, his counsel, and members of the defense team may show but not provide copies of any unredacted discovery to witnesses. I wonder who the witnesses will be in this case. I would assume his co-defendants are. But, his life is over, man. Like, bro, you already did 3.5 years for one fraud case. They're about to give you 10 for this, bro. Because millions of dollars from the government ain't going to be something small. You're going to do 10. Over 10 years. I'm assuming closer to like 15 to 20 for this one. Now, he did do a podcast from prison. And honestly, from this podcast from prison, it doesn't really feel like he quite understands the gravity of what's going on because he's still interested in publicity or wanting to speak.
Sure. I know this is a surprise. And I'm surprised as well.
AI is
crazy. I mean, it's fortunate, and probably a lot of people are disappointed, shocked, which I am too. But shit happens, and life must go on.
Hey, listen, man, that's the realest you could keep it, man. Hey. The shit happens, man. Life goes on, bro.
What the fuck?
But yeah, the podcasting career, I don't think it could thrive from prison, man. We've seen a few people try to do like prison podcasts, like Suge Knight and others. It never works out, man. Y'all let me know in the comment section. What do you guys think about this?
This is sick.